It is currently 1:46 a.m. and I just had an encounter with God, and this changes a lot of things with us because this one was different from like any other kind of encounter I've ever had. This one was like one where I was down on my knees, begging and crying. So, like I said, this changes things with us because that's been me being very vulnerable with God. I think this kind of speaks to like me as a person. Like I don't get really vulnerable with anybody or with people in general, and I think I can also like lead this in my relationship with God because I also tend to not get really vulnerable with God. I just kind of like keep it casual, just hey God, here's what I need, please help me out type stuff. But it was like truly the first time that I really got like really vulnerable. I've gotten vulnerable in previous times. Part of it was just asking God to fix my broken heart and mend my broken spirit, which is a lot to dig into there. But this was me like being really vulnerable and really like begging God for this thing. Now, it's kind of counterintuitive with the normal human thinking, what I'm gonna say, but what this taught me was God's love. And there's just so much to unpack with that. When we normally think about God's love, we think about, the cuddly, warm hug, that's like Jesus like hugging you and comforting you and just like, really like being there for you, your safe space, your refuge, your comfort, your help. Just like it's very, feels good. That's how we normally think of God's love. And that is sometimes how God's love is, a lot of times. But there's another aspect of God's love that we don't tend to talk about. And this aspect of God's love is the one that is that father, right? Think about as a kid, right? Let me, create this analogy for you. As a kid, you're in the playground, just having fun, and there's a ditch somewhere, right? And you're literally running toward that ditch, right? And you're like excited to run to the ditch. You're like, this is so fun. I'm a kid. Like this ditch looks so cool. I'm gonna jump right into it, right? And you're excited to do it. And you're like, this is gonna be so great. But your dad just like comes out of nowhere, yanks you mid-flight, like mid-running, and you're like crying and yelling and trying to throw a tantrum, like you're about to jump into this ditch, like this is gonna be so fun. And like you don't realize like your dad was just trying to save you from that because he loves you. But like in the moment you're just like so like you're like crying. You know how kids like throw temper tantrums. Your dad in his love is not gonna like just leave you and just let you go jump into that ditch, right? Because obviously you're gonna hurt yourself. What I'm trying to say is the father's love at that point in time is trying to save the kid from jumping into the ditch. The kid is yelling, throwing a temper tantrum because they can't see that what they're about to do is about to like could even possibly end their lives. The father's not gonna like just gonna let them just do it. But the kid doesn't realize that because they're kids, right? They're not as developed to understand that this is going to hurt you. So at that moment they're crying, throwing this tantrum. But then as they grow older, you're like, oh shoot, I'm grateful to my dad for like saving me from this, even though I was like about to like hurt myself. And that's kind of how God's love is sometimes. We're his children, and sometimes we really just want to do some things that we don't realize are dangerous for us, or are not right for us, or are wrong for us. And because we can't see in the moment, God kind of like saves us from those things because he loves us. And in the moment we're kind of throwing this tantrum, and because we can't see that this thing is dangerous from us, like we're like not even hate God in that point in time. But God's love is still abundant, and as you kind of grow older, or you become stronger in your faith and develop your relationship with God, to realize, oh wow, he was really trying to like save me from this thing. So that's one part of God's love. It's the kind of love that literally like saves you from things that you don't realize, but in the moment like you throw tantrums about it, or you like are saddened or sorrowful or just like bitter about those things. But as you look forward, as you kind of grow in your faith and your relationship with God, you start to see why. Which is kind of why sometimes it's really important to not lose your faith and lose your sight of God and lose your love for God because of certain situations that didn't go how you wanted them. Because a lot of times it's God just trying to save you from your own self. That's one aspect of God's love. Or the second aspect of God's love. Right? We're talking about the first one, it's kind of cuddly and lovey-dovey. About this one, it's kind of like saving you from your own self. Third one, this one is different. And this one is like you've got to really be in certain like life situations for you to like experience like this dimension of his love. And sometimes God will put us in a situation so that we can see this side of his love. And that kind of love is the love that brings you to like submission, that brings you to your knees, that brings you to surrender, right? That kind of love, that overwhelming love that brings you to surrender. That kind of love, to experience that kind of love, like you have to really, really be in a deep, dark place, in a deep, dark pit. Remember that ditch I talked about? You have to really be in that ditch, right? As that kid, and like have try to like dig yourself out of it. Try to like pull yourself out of it. Like maybe that's like God didn't even save you from that ditch because you're like, you know what? I'm just gonna leave you to your own devices, and you end up in that ditch. And then you're in the ditch. You can really see that God is there, so asking for help. You're like, no, I'm gonna dig myself out of this. I'm gonna dig myself out of this. As you're digging, trying to dig yourself out of this, you're digging yourself deeper into it, right? And because you don't yet understand this dimension of God's love, you don't know how to ask for help or how to come to submission and surrender and ask him to like help you come out of this ditch. But the moment that you surrender, or the moment that God convicts you and like puts you in a position to like get on your knees and completely surrender and submit to his will, that's the moment you start to experience this different dimension of his love. The dimension that brings you to a point of vulnerability and asking God to help you out of this thing. And I think some people like it's easier for them because they're like they rely on God and everything. I think that's really good. But some people are either like just naturally like not really open-minded or open. I think it's probably maybe like mostly men, right? That typically tend to not be as vulnerable, no one ask for help, and do things for themselves. And I fall into that category. And until I got to the point where I was like, wait, I'm trying to help myself out of this hole. The more I try to help myself, the deeper I dig myself into this. And at this point, I really need God to save me. When God saves you from that ditch you're in, he doesn't need to like dig anything. He just pulls you out. He pulls you out. He yanks you out. Right? Like that kind of power is not the kind of power that like punishes the Almighty God. So to experience that dimension of love, you really want to come to a point of submission and surrender and just completely letting everything into God's hand and just lifting your hands and being like, hey God, this is me. I'm completely surrendering everything to you. I'm making myself vulnerable to you. Right? This is not a contest of my own strength versus your strength because in my weakness, you are my strength. I believe David said this in the book of Psalm, 2 Samuel actually. Yeah, I had my Bible for this one. But yeah, 2 Samuel 22 verse, God is my strong fortress and he makes my way perfect. That's 33. Verse 30, in your strength I can crush an army. With my God I can stow any wall. The different parts of this chapter, it just goes to show like God's strength, right? According to David. And there's a lot more in this whole chapter. It's David's song of praise. Definitely recommend reading it. 2 Samuel chapter 22. I've got a couple of like markings of it in my Bible, but the longest short of it is David essentially just like giving an adoration of God because God is his strength, right? So that's a bit of a tangent there. And even in 2 Corinthians as well. 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 8. 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away. Jesus, that is insane. That's crazy. That's crazy. I started this video telling you how I was thanking God. And in verse 9 it says, each time he said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I'm glad to boast about my weakness so that the power of Christ can work through me as I take pleasure in my weakness and in the insults, hardships, persecutions, and troubles that I suffer for Christ. For when I'm weak, then I'm strong. This is literally the same thing I said I was begging God, but this is the answer. My grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. Wow. To go for the tangent there, but again, this brings everything back to God's love. When you come to a point of surrendering to God's strength, to his power in your weakness, that's when you experience a different dimension of his love. The love that is reassuring, that gives you peace, that gives you that perfect peace. We talked about perfect peace in a previous video. I should definitely use that by now, but that's what God's love is. And you just gotta come to the point where you continually strive to experience that love and to love him because he has so much love to give. It's overwhelming, it's abundant, and it's more than enough for whatever it is that you're going through, whatever it is you're dealing with. You've got to come to a point of surrender. His love is always going to be there, but this dimension of his love, this one where you completely surrender, completely submit everything, and you're just like, hey God, I'm begging you. That's different. That's a different level of vulnerability, and that also opens up a different dimension of your relationship with God. Stop putting on this facade of, God, please help me with this. Yeah, it's all cool, but some things in life, some things you experience require you kneeling, begging, and wailing because that's how you feel. That's you being open with your emotions. That was me tonight. That was me in that shower, kneeling, begging God to take the pain away, begging God to heal my heart, begging God to mend my spirit, and in that I felt God's love in a different way. So beautiful, so special. Nothing compares to it. And I hope you take some time to think on these things. Read your word. Look at those verses I shared with you. God's love is sufficient. If you want to see the video I talked about with regards to perfect peace, it would be somewhere on the screen. Thanks for watching. God bless you. Bye-bye.